Records management, sovereign citizens and paper terrorism. I need to explain this one. It targets law enforcement, judges, and elected officials by filing bogus tax forms, bogus tax liens, and other frivolous lawsuits. Something that we should, maybe not us necessarily right now, but cloud technology. Do you compute? Election administration, taking technology a step further. Social media 101, upgraded voter registration. Vote centers, help America vote. Anyway, I won't go on. So those are classes that we could require the county clerk and possibly the supervisor of the Office of Elections to take. That way they would be constantly updated on a national basis as to what's going on. But I do think that and some of the classes to get the certification you can take through your employment. You can take management classes or supervisory classes or anything, and work experience counts. All I'm saying is that we should have some minimum qualifications, and then we should possibly require these people to do continuing education so they stay on top of these subjects nationally. This organization is affiliate of NACO, and I think it costs either $35 or $65 a year to join. It's nothing. But you're going to get a good education, and that's what we need, is to have a clerk that's well educated. So with that, I think that we should put some qualifications in here. By the way, when I mentioned the certified public officials, there's only 16 in the country. We are not going to get that caliber of a person. So we're going to have to train our own here, and that's the reason I'm looking for some minimum qualifications for these jobs. And I think we should be doing a job search to find a good management person. I don't think we should just necessarily look on our own block. It gets us into trouble when we do that. So if I'm hoping that the discussion today that we've had will inspire the author of this charter amendment to make some changes, and one in particular that Mr. Anish and I both support, and I think others do too, is that the office of the clerk reports to the council as a whole, not just to the chair. No one person should dominate that office, because then it's not an independent county clerk. Basically, at this time, the way this is written, I have too many concerns to support it at this time. I do think the number 7 duty should be report to the council as a whole. I'm hoping that we'll see some changes on this, and I yield. Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Eoff.
Well, Ms. Ford, but number 1 duty is be the clerk of the council. So there's nothing in the way it's stated now that says that this clerk is directly beholden to a chairman. It reads, well, I'm reading it to mean it's the clerk of the council. So I think that would be a redundant addition. But I had some time too during lunch to think about this, and I actually think some of the concerns raised earlier are really non-issues, because we do have not only an election supervisor who actually supervises our elections. The clerk is just the chief election officer, but not really the nuts and bolts of the operation of the election. And the same as far as Mr. Onishi's suggestion for a business manager, or whatever he called it. I think we have council services, civil service positions as a council services supervisor and a committee services supervisors. They supervise staff. They manage that level of day-to-day operations. I think this clerk position is best defined more towards the way Ms. Willie had at first characterized as a people person. It's someone who's going to manage the entire operation, detect the problems, be able to deal with the problems, and the skills that are required in that are a little bit hard to define sometimes. So my opinion is that if we go this route and the council is charged with a 6-year appointment, that we, as this body that's elected out of trust from our constituents to make good decisions, were to be tasked with the decision of selecting a clerk, that we would discuss the qualifications that we would believe best served the organization. So I'm not really. I thought what Ms. Ford mentioned, there are some courses that can be ongoing that people would want to, if you were elected or selected for a 6-year appointment, I think you would, maybe not as a qualification under the charter, but as just a internal suggested educational opportunity, you could, if those classes are available, you could be made aware of them, and you would do that just to make sure you have, you're on top of your job. You know what's going on. If it's through NACO, you'd know what's going on in other counties. You would be probably, as serious as this job is, it's high paying. It would be 6 years or 4. I'm not sure if we're considering that, but whatever. It's a appointment that's not to be taken lightly. So I think that between the council members going through a selection criteria on their own, and then the person who is selected being serious about his job or her job, would be given all the tools that are required to be a good clerk. But I think starting to define it too specifically may not really be what I think, especially after serving as a staff to a charter commission, not how a charter would need to be laid out at this time. So I think Mr. Yoshimoto's more broad, simplistic, well, not simplistic in a negative way, but more simple change here is probably all that's required right now. Because if you think about it, all the clerks we've had appointed for 2-year periods in the last several years have had different kinds of backgrounds, different kinds of qualifications, and maybe we can learn from what works and what doesn't work. I mean, sometimes we thought council appointed an attorney, sometimes an attorney wasn't the top, priority. So I think that this would be worthwhile to send to the voters. I guess I'd like to hear from Mr. Yoshimoto if he's thought about any other changes he would think necessary after hearing the discussion. But those are things that came to my mind I wanted to express.
Thank you. Any other discussion before I call on Mr. Yoshimoto? Councilmember,
She already went.
oh, okay. But let me call Councilmember Yoshimoto because it's in the,
Okay,
you went
if
on
he
that
wants
first
to
round.
answer.
Thank you.
Okay. To answer Vice Chair Eoff, the major things that we talked about today are things that I did consider, but obviously didn't make it to the draft that we have here. I'm willing to think about it and consider possibly maybe putting in some minimum qualifications, but my hesitancy there is that, no matter what unless it's something really, helpful. If we get too narrow, then we limit our choices, right? So I want to make sure any future council has the flexibility to make the best choice it can make based upon the information that they have. And that's why I'm opposite of Mr. Onishi. He's saying he doesn't want to place the responsibility with the next council. I do. I want them to have as much flexibility as possible to do whatever the next council feels appropriate, if this is approved by the voters, to choose the clerk. And I also still think 6 years is better, because I think that lessens the likelihood of anyone trying to remove someone just because they didn't agree with them. I mean, that's political, and we've seen what happens here. And I don't think the clerk should be political in making decisions that serve the council and the community. So I'm willing to consider maybe in the next 2 weeks or until the next meeting to see. This requires 3 readings at council, so I think I'd like this to move forward, because we will have at least one other opportunity to consider it. So yeah, I'd be willing to consider those.
Councilmember Kern?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think this has been some good discussion. I, too, think we should just move this forward. One of the concerns, and Ms. Eoff kind of already brought this up as an idea, is that, one, we have this amendment on the charter level, which would change that. At the council level, we could maybe insert some minimum qualifications or something there that if the council deemed too much, then we could adjust it instead of pigeonholing ourselves with them in this context, right? Where it'd be a charter amendment. Now we got to go back and go through this whole process, and our hands or the next council's hands would be very much tied, versus saying this is step A. Step B would be to do it on the council side. So almost like a council rule. So as the council deems fit, you know what, we need to increase it, decrease it a little bit, they would have that ability, and it would actually be able to be pretty fluid and fast acting. So that would be maybe a one consideration. We could just move forward with this and come up with some other language that, almost an accompanying bill or reso that would only go into effect if this actually got passed. That, I think, would kind of cover both sides and give maximum flexibility. So that would be my thought. I think we should move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Member Willie?
I guess what I'm concerned about is sort of the balance of power between all of the council members and the chair, and we don't know who's going to be the chair next time, so I'm just trying to take that into consideration, and that if it is every 2 years, then really the other council members have a little more say-so. We're sort of weighing in. If it's a clerk who basically, I'm going with whatever the chair says, the other council members are then stuck for the next 6 years, or I interpret the rules in this way, however the council chair goes. And the same thing if there is a clerk that basically leans towards the administration, which I felt was somewhat the case, or at least, sitting back at audience, one of the clerks I felt was basically not their number one alliance, wasn't the council, it was the administration. And not that the administration or that council, which one was right, but it bothered me just in terms of the normal balance of power. And in that case, if it was me or any others saying, hey, what's going on, I think that we would be limiting ourselves in that case, since that person would be in place for 6 years. So right now I'm not going to support it as it is now. I do appreciate the aim towards independence. I do want to say all of the flexibility, I agree with all of you that have said we need to maximize flexibility, and I think Councilmember Kearns, if we wanted to tighten something up there, we could do it in the rules and not in a charter. That was a good point. Ms. Eoff brought up about it does say to the council, but that I think is sort of how it is right now, but the way it really operates is you've got, the council, the chair, the clerk is right under the chair. So it really is, let's just say here's a rule, this is what it reads. You go to the clerk, he says, yeah, I agree, that's what it reads. Chair, he says it doesn't read it, then go to the corporation council, I don't want to get in the middle of it. Where are you, how is that structure? How do we change it operationally where it's the full council? It all sounds nice that, like Stuart, you report to the whole council. Okay, well, what does that mean? You would go to the chair. So I'm just sort of bringing up some types of scenarios, and really the main thing is that if we have it at 2 years, at least all the non-chair members have a little bit more say-so and able to affirm, whereas if it's 6 years, we're really put in a position, as Councilmember Onishi said, who's ever sort of on the out and not in with whatever is the whoever is going to be the chair, which won't be Jay next time. So those are some of my concerns.
Thank you. Councilmember Eoff?
I just wanted to respond because, Ms. Willie, there has to be some kind of hierarchy, for lack of a better word right now, but we do select a chairman, so we've already put our trust in him. There has to be some leadership hierarchy in this organization, and yeah, it is political, but with, we've spent some time thinking about the role of the Honolulu clerk, and from talking to her, she becomes a lot more she becomes apolitical. She becomes representative of the council as a whole, rather than any particular majority, minority, leadership, anything, because she's there for 6 years. She's in charge of the workings of this organization, rather than being kind of directly under or beholden to the leadership. We're always going to have the leadership because, it's the structure. Yeah. And so I think, actually, to me, it's more the opposite. Your concern, where it's valid. I mean, yeah, you have to live with that, but I think that's what Mr. Yoshimoto's trying to get us away from, actually, by doing it this way. So I don't know. I know there's always pros and cons, but we thought of this, years ago too, and just in thinking of it, asked some questions of the Honolulu clerk. And that's kind of what I imagine it would be less political with the appointment.
I'm going to ask if Ms. Willie would want to respond.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think that is a good point to consider. So I think, all of these different things it's weighing and figuring out how that all works. Thanks.
Councilmember Yoshimoto?
Yeah, just a really quick comment. Miss Willie, I remember you saying one time in the past that, there's no turkeys on this council. Remember that term? You mentioned that? And then that speaks volumes because I have confidence that if the next council has the responsibility to make a decision such as this with the approval of the voters, that council will exercise great diligence because of the ramifications that come forth. So they wouldn't hire a turkey, so to speak, because, the person will outlast the council members, right? Council members come and go, but they'll stay for at least 6 years unless, something really bad happens. But anyway, that's the logic. So, yeah.
Good point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion before we vote? Councilmember Ford?
I'm going to try to be gentle about this. As the only person on this council who's ever been physically threatened during a council meeting, I can assure you, and being in the minority on the council, that you can't get rid of somebody who's on a 6-year term if the majority of the council doesn't care that you're being physically threatened. I totally understand why Jay chose 6 years. I think it makes the position apolitical to a certain degree. On the other hand, if you don't have a council that's willing to say, that's enough cause for you to get your you-know-what thrown out of here, then you've stuck with somebody who's acting like that or interrupting the meeting and trying to participate in the discussion as a deliberator rather than as a clerk acting on the parliamentary rules. So I have that concern. And there's a balance. I know there's a balance in here. I'm not so sure that Mr. Onishi isn't correct that we need to put the guidelines together. As Mr. Kern has said, maybe we need to put the guidelines together now if this goes forward and passes, that, these things need to be dealt with in the code if it's not going to be dealt with in the charter. And I can see a good reason for not putting it in the charter. But there are problems. There are problems that this is not addressing, and I am still concerned. So just want to say that.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, being no further discussion, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote, please. Mr. Clerk?
Ms. Eoff,
Aye.
Ms. Ford,
No.
Mr. Iligan,
Aye.
Mr. Kanuha,
Aye.
Mr. Kern,
Aye.
Ms. Willie,
Aye.
Mr. Yoshimoto,
Aye.
Chair Poindexter.
Aye.
Chair Poindexter, you have 7 ayes, 1 no, and 1 absent.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see. Bill 253 moves forward to council with a positive recommendation. Mr. Clerk, please read in Bill.